Instructional Transaction Theory, Instructional Design Based on Knowledge Objects, a summary by Carmesia Goff and Nicole Lipscomb. Before we present our summary, let's first summarize our presentation. We will have key terms, instructional transaction theory, the theory background, the component methods of ITT, the goals of ITT, and a little bit of information about the theorist. It is important to understand these key terms when summarizing this article. First, we have the instructional transaction theory. This theory is concerned with two primary considerations: what to teach and how to teach. We also need to have an understanding of the component display theory. This provides a list of prescriptions for designing instruction for different kinds of instructional outcomes, according to Dr. Merrill. In ITT, an instructional transaction is all of the learning interactions necessary for a student to acquire a particular kind of knowledge or skill. Knowledge objects are containers consisting of compartments for different related elements of knowledge. So the framework of a knowledge object is the same for a wide variety of different topics within the subject domain. In our last three key terms, instructional strategies, instructional algorithm, and learning environment, will be discussed further in our presentation. What is instructional transaction theory? Instructional transaction theory was created as an attempt to bring precision to the component display theory. Instructional transactions are all the learning interactions necessary for a student to acquire a particular kind of knowledge or skill. An instructional transaction shell includes the presentation strategies, the practice strategies, and the learner strategies. These are required and appropriate to promote acquisition of the instructional goal. Now let's take a look at the theory background. The component display theory, it provides a list of prescriptions for designing instruction. Now these are for different kinds of instructional outcomes. Now according to Merrill, the CDT describes instructional strategies in terms of strategy components. These components are primary presentation forms, secondary presentation forms, and interdisplay relationships. Here again, we will talk about instructional theory, just to gain a little more understanding according to Merrill. Now again, it addresses what to teach and how to teach. Now, the ITT is not concerned with the aspect of what should be taught. Rather, it is what are the knowledge components required for the given type of instruction. So, according to Merrill, these strategies want to include the presentation of the appropriate knowledge components, and this will help facilitate the student's learning and interaction. Now here we get to a very interesting part of our summary, the computer program assumption. Now this is where the instruction is observed as a computer program. And based on that model, the knowledge is represented as data. And in that data, or with that data, it's manipulated by one or more sets of instruction for processing. Now, this strategy is instructional algorithm. Now, similarly to ITT, it is a system of knowledge representation. So the components of this knowledge are processed by the instructional algorithm built into an instructional system. The Gagné assumption. Now with this assumption of instructional theory, it's saying that there are different kinds of learning outcomes and that each of these different kinds of learning outcomes require unique conditions for learning. Now, Gagné indicated 9 events of instruction, which include incorporating these 3 events to construct an appropriate instructional strategy. Present the knowledge or demonstrate the skill, provide practice with feedback, and provide learner guidance for a given type of learning outcome. Just as we discussed in our summary of terms, knowledge objects are containers consisting of compartments for different related elements of knowledge. Now, all knowledge objects have a set of information slots. This usually includes name, portrayal, and description. Now, notice the different components of these sets of information slots. With a name, one or more symbols or terms reference that knowledge. With a portrayal, one or more multimedia objects represent this, such as text or audio, and allow you to show or represent the knowledge object to a student. With description, it is an open compartment into which an author can place any desired information about the knowledge object for the student. The component methods of instructional transaction theory. Transactions. Now, if you would take a look at Table 1, we have created this table to organize the next few transaction summaries that we're going to discuss. Now, Merrill says that there are 13 classes of instructional transactions, but with this article, he addresses 3. Component transactions, abstraction transactions, and association transactions. Component transactions. Now, the component transactions are identified by the author as the building blocks for abstraction and association training transactions. Now, if you refer to Table 1, you will see that the article emphasizes the instructional goals for the component transactions. These 3 are identify, execute, and interpret. Now, with the goal to identify, we want to identify for learning the name, location, and function of parts of a device. To execute the transaction, we want this to learn or perform a procedure. It's usually hands-off, requires practice, feedback, and guidance. To interpret in a component transaction, we want this for learning, to explain, predict, and troubleshoot. The presentation required, usually want to explore and greatly explain what happens. Practice, have a control panel to set conditions and attain a consequence, and guidance in this as well. We have created a learning activity for you that you are to complete at the end of this summary presentation. Please review the next 3 slides that further go into detail for identify, execute, and interpret. Become familiar with them and prepare for your learning activity. Goals of instructional transaction theory. With the goal of effective instruction, there were concerns that the current emphasis on information and lack of emphasis on appropriate instructional strategies were having an effect on the learners. It is their hope that the formulation will enable instructional designers to design more effective and appealing instructional projects. With the goal of efficient instructional development, it was intended that they could derive the theory and methodology which would facilitate the automation of which the instructional design process would improve. With the goal of instructional learning environments, it is discussed in the article that the development of interactive learning environments is extremely labor intensive and very expensive to develop. So representing the knowledge as knowledge objects enables the building of a general purpose simulation engine. For the goal of adaptive instruction, the concern for this came about because the representation of knowledge and imprecise specification of instructional strategies has hindered the development of truly adaptive instruction, according to the article. So the precise representation of knowledge in the form of knowledge objects is the goal, hence adaptive instruction. We cannot complete our summary without sharing a little background information about the theorist of this article, M. David Merrill. professor in the Department of Instructional Technology at Utah State University. He was a major contributor to the TICCITT authoring system in the 1970s, and of course a major contributor to the instructional transaction theory and the ID based on knowledge objects in the 1980s. Now you have to get really excited because it's time for your learning activity. Please visit carmesiagoff.weebly.com/itt-learning-activity.html and click on the link to download the PDF file to complete your learning activity. Have fun!